After the Israelites crossed the Sea of Reeds, they travelled through the desert. And for 3 days they couldn't find any water. And when they finally found a place with water, it was all bitter. The people said, "Moses, there's nothing for us to drink." But God showed Moses a piece of wood, which Moses threw into the water. And suddenly the water became sweet. This is Storytime with Josh. And these are the first trials of the desert. As the Israelites travelled through the desert, they started saying, "Moses, if only God had killed us back in Egypt. Back in Egypt we had big pots of meat, and we ate as much as we wanted. But you've led us here into the desert to starve us all to death." God told Moses, "Tell the people that tonight they will eat meat, and tomorrow I will send them bread from heaven. But I will use this to test them, to see how well they obey my instructions." That night, God sent flocks of birds down to the Israelite camp, and the Israelites cooked them and ate their meat that night. The next morning there was dew covering the desert floor. But once the dew had evaporated, there was still some thin white wafery stuff there. And the people said, "What is it?" And from then on they started calling the stuff Whatsit. Moses said, "This is the bread that God has sent you from heaven. Go out and gather as much of it as you need for one day and cook it, but don't keep any of it till morning." So the Israelites went out and gathered as much of the Whatsit as they needed and cooked it. But some of them kept some Whatsit till morning. And in the morning it was full of maggots and it stank. On the 6th day of the week there was twice as much Whatsit on the ground. And Moses said, "Today go out and gather as much Whatsit as you need for 2 days and cook it. Because the 7th day of the week is a day of rest. And God doesn't want you to have to go and gather Whatsit or cook it on the day of rest." So the Israelites went and gathered as much Whatsit as they needed for 2 days. And in the morning, the stuff that they'd saved, it was fine. There were no maggots. But some of the Israelites went out in the morning on the 7th day of the week to collect the Whatsit, and there wasn't any there. God said, "Won't you guys ever follow my instructions? I gave you twice as much Whatsit yesterday because today is supposed to be a day of rest, and I didn't want you having to go and gather or cook Whatsit on the day of rest." And from that day, until the day that the Israelites finally entered the land that God was giving them, God sent Whatsit every morning 6 days a week to provide for the Israelites. And God told Moses, "Collect some of the Whatsit in a jar to show the Israelites for generations to come how I have provided for you."